Fall camp is just around the corner, and I've got all the big storylines that we need to watch out for as the Bearcats gear up for the 2022 season.
Our Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. It's free and available everywhere you get your podcast and on YouTube. Up to 373 subscribers and counting. Hit that subscribe button. Follow us too so you can get an alert every time we drop a new episode. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Fall camp is just around the corner for the Cincinnati Bearcats. They will head to Camp Higher Ground within the next few days, next week or two, and definitely looking forward to the season getting underway. That's when this content is going to be awesome. Not that it's not awesome already. We are 40 days away from kickoff in Fayetteville, Arkansas. The big storylines going into fall camp. There are so many. And that's what I love about this. There are so many storylines for this year's team. There may be more storylines for this year's team than last year's team. That's because the Bearcats are in such a unique position heading into this season. I'm going to touch on that in the second segment. In this first segment, we're going to talk about the two biggest storylines, and that is quarterbacks, the quarterback battle, and cornerbacks. The drop-off in terms of talent and experience from Sauce Gardner and Coby Bryant to whoever steps in and replaces them, whether that be a combination of Justin Harris, Sammy Anderson, Todd Bumpus, Sammy Anderson, Issa Jarman. I mean, there are so many options. JQ Hardaway, a lot of options at corner. But how much of a drop-off in talent will there be? Will there be in experience? We will talk about that in this segment. Let's start with quarterbacks, though. The quarterback battle, it's the biggest storyline that has dominated the offseason. It's going to dominate fall camp, and I don't think it is I don't think there is any separation in this quarterback battle. I think it is so close. I think it is incredibly close. I think it could go either way. Ben Bryant or Evan Prater. My question is this: who is the most prepared? Who is the most prepared to hit the ground running once fall camp starts? Because it's great what you do in the spring, but fall camp is when the season starts. That's when you are gearing up for the season. That is when you are gearing up to win a third straight conference championship. And the Cincinnati Bearcats need to get this quarterback battle right. I'm not saying they have to get it right week one, because I'm not expecting them to win week one against Arkansas. I am expecting them, though, to at least be 3-1 coming out of non-conference play. And if the quarterback is still a question mark, that's when it's time to press the panic button. If the quarterback is whoever it is, if he's performing well and you feel like you can go into conference play, you can go into Dallas and Orlando, SMU and UCF, and win those two games with whoever you have under center, then the Bearcats are in a great position. But the quarterback, you have to get it right. Even though both options, Ben Bryant and Evan Prater, are great, there is a wrong decision that can be made. There is. For both quarterbacks. You know, I said earlier this offseason that if you start Ben Bryant and you know he has some limitations, you know that there's a ceiling there. But Evan Prater is inexperienced. And if he shows that not just in the Arkansas game, but if he shows that against Miami and he struggles there, or against Indiana and he struggles there, or at Tulsa and he struggles there, then you've got another issue. Then you have some problems. But what I'm wondering is, who is most prepared to hit the ground running in fall camp? Which quarterback's journey has him as the most prepared? Does playing for 1 year at Eastern Michigan, a full season's worth of college football, you started and you played and you threw for over 3,000 yards and 14 touchdowns, does that make you more prepared because you know how to go about your job on a weekly basis, how to prepare, how to be a part of the game planning, how to be the leader in practice, how to practice leading up to a game, how to, on game day, the routine. You know the ins and outs of being a college football quarterback. Does that make you more prepared than someone in Evan Prater? Ben Bryant, by the way, started last year. Or does learning for 2 years behind one of the winningest quarterbacks in college football history, who led a college football program in the group of 5 level of college football to the CFP, does that make you more prepared? Does all the wisdom and knowledge you gained from Desmond Ridder, if you're Evan Prater, I know he hasn't started a full season yet, but this guy was a former 4-star recruit, Mr. Football in the state of Ohio. And that's a big-time honor. When you're Mr. Football in the state of Ohio, and you come from the state of Cincinnati, and you played your high school football in the city of Cincinnati, where the talent is off the charts, does that make you more prepared than Ben Bryant? This is a very interesting question to think about. But, again, the quarterback, whoever it is, and I would not be shocked either way. You all know I want Evan Prater to be the starter. I think he has more potential. And I think there's nothing wrong with saying to Evan, hey, we're going to throw you to the Wolves against Arkansas. And you know what? If you struggle, hey, that's okay. It's your first college start, and you're playing in front of 80,000 fans in an SEC environment. You're supposed to struggle. Now, if he doesn't, then we're going to take off. Ben Bryant, more experienced. If he goes out there and plays admirably, Bearcats, come up short, let's just say, which is the most likely outcome in that game, I think. Let's say they lose 34-24 like they did against Memphis in Bryant's last start. Okay, fine. I think the Bearcats can win that game, but I'm being realistic, and I'm like, this team is not as talented as last year's team. They might go through some growing pains. But the quarterback battle, without question, is the biggest storyline going into fall camp. We'll spend a lot of time talking about it once fall camp begins. Look at all sorts of angles. We'll talk to those who were there covering it and get their insights. Cornerback is another position that is, going to dominate the storylines. Why? Because you're replacing 2 All-Americans. Seriously, that right there is a storyline in of itself. For guys like Justin Harris and Taj Ward and Sammy Bumpus or Sammy Anderson, Todd Bumpus, J.Q. Hardaway, Issa Jarman, all these corners who haven't seen the field much throughout their careers in Cincinnati, how will they fare taking first-team reps against a pretty good Bearcats receiving corps in fall camp? What kind of impact will Carrie Combs have? Carrie Combs has been here before. He's coached at Cincinnati before. But in a way, he is kind of taking a step down the ladder. You go from being the defensive coordinator and the defensive play caller at Ohio State. You give up those play calling duties last year, and then you come back down to what is still a group of 5 team and be a positions coach. But you can't view it that way. If you're an optimistic person like I am, and you view things from a positive lens, then Carrie Combs coming back here is huge, especially when you consider Cincinnati's going to the Big 12 in 2023. Carrie Combs is high energy, loves the game of football, loves the city of Cincinnati, has an identity with the city of Cincinnati. He coached the Coleraine, and now he's back with the university, and it's in a much better place than it was when he left 10 years ago. So the impact that he can have on these corners are huge. Will the cornerbacks look inexperienced? It's very similar to, how good is Evan Prater going to be? I think he can be really good because he played behind Desmond Ridder. Well, how good can the corners be if you had these players learn from Sauce and Coby, who went on to become NFL draft picks, All-Americans, and Coby winning the Jim Thorpe Award? How much does that factor into how they look coming out of the gates in fall camp? That's a very big question. We talk about the quarterback battle, and you're excited to see that play out. I'm excited to see how the corners look in fall camp. That's a question that I will ask anyone who is covering fall camp. And we'll have some those media members covering fall camp, Locked On Bearcats. Keep it Locked On Bearcats throughout fall camp, and most certainly throughout the season, and most certainly today and every day. Coming up, why this is the most unique season in Bearcats football history. I've said it's the most important. It's also the most unique. I'll explain after a word from LinkedIn. You see, as the sun comes out and small businesses are back in business, LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier to grow your team. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the people you want to interview faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know that every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockdowncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All last week, Locked On NFL revealed the NFL stars that moved the betting line the most. It's the top 50 most valuable players in the league from odds makers at BetOnline. Check out the series that aired last week on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Alex Frank here with you, your host of Locked On Bearcats each and every day. Maybe it's some point Desmond Ridder, Alec Pierce, Jerome Ford, Coby, Bryant, and all the Bearcats who were drafted last year or this past spring in the NFL draft. Maybe they'll appear on the top 50 list someday. It's a very good possibility. Sauce Gardner could appear on the top 50 by next year. I mean, he's being projected as defensive rookie of the year, front runner. Athlon Sports has him as such. Anyway, so this is the most unique season in Bearcats football history. Why? Because think about the timing of it. It's a season sandwiched around a college football playoff season and moving to the Big 12 next year. So that alone makes it unique because the Cincinnati Bearcats, and I've kind of felt this before they made the playoff and before they got admitted to the Big 12, but I felt like this was a major college program playing in a group of five conference. They are better than ECU. They're better than Tulane, Tulsa, and SMU, and well, not UCF anymore, but they're better Temple. They're better than these teams who you don't really like. If I say a name of a school in this conference, ECU, are you thinking, oh, that's Power 5? No. If I say Cincinnati, are you saying Power 5 major? Yes. It makes sense that Cincinnati is finally getting their moment in the sun in the Big 12 next year. But this year's unique because they're still playing in a group of five conference, and yet I still think that they are a Power 5 team. You know, the move to the Big 12 could have an impact on this season. Will the Cincinnati Bearcats overlook this season for next season in the Big 12? You know, how much is the move going to impact overall this season? I don't think it will because I think this team is out to prove something. I think they're out to prove that last year was not a fluke. I think that they still are going to beat a lot of teams by 30 points. I think they're going to win a game or two that maybe the odds makers don't think they will. I still think this team is going to be heads on, all in on winning the third straight conference championship, right? They have to be. Because you can't go into the Big 12 on the heels of not winning a conference championship. How will this team follow up last year's college football playoff run? That's a big question. And I don't know if we've talked about that a lot. Because what we've been talking about this offseason is how do you replace Desmond Ridder? How do you replace Sauce Gardner? How do you replace Coby Bryant when really they follow up last year? We've been talking about the last several off seasons, including the one leading up to 2021. How do you follow up a 10-2 surprise season in 2018? Are you going to live up to the hype in 2020? Are you going to live up to the hype in 2021? Can you build off of what you did last year? This offseason, it's how do you follow up the culmination of what last year was in making the college football playoff? So much has happened in the past 7 months that we kind of forget that this team is coming off a college football playoff berth. They have to remember where they were. I don't think they'll have an issue doing that because you still have a lot of players on this year's team who were part of last year's team. Josh Wiley, Leonard Taylor, Malik Vann, Sean Pace, Javon Hicks, Tyler Scott, Trey Tucker, Ryan Montgomery. A lot of players on the offensive line. All players remember where they were from last year. Yes, you lost 9 NFL draftees from last year's team, but don't think the players behind them forget where they were. Will they feel pressure to replicate what they did last year this season? Will they play with the same sense of urgency they played with to climb the mountain last year? Here's the thing. This has been talked about. Climbing the mountain. The Bearcats climbed a very steep mountain that took years for them to do, and yet they did it. They climbed a mountain that took 4 years from being at the depths of irrelevancy of college football in 2017. They got to 10 wins in 2018. Now you're in position to compete for a conference championship. At least you're relevant. They then did that the next year. Lost to Memphis in 2 close games. Then the expectations were set for a very good 2020 season. Didn't even know if that season was going to be played. It was. They exceeded all expectations. Blew several teams out. Had an unbelievably talented offense. The defense was tough and nasty. They're number 7 in the college football playoff rankings initially in 2020. You knew, though, that their chances of actually going weren't very good. But 2021, the hype was real. Desmond Ridder announces he's coming back for his senior season. Myjai Sanders announces he's coming back. You still have Sauce Gardner. Coby Bryant announces he's coming back. Because these players knew they could achieve something special. And they did just that. They got off to a good start last year. They had to climb the mountain of getting back to relevancy, competing for championships, winning for championships, and then ultimately getting to the college football playoff, which they did just that. Now, what mountain do you have to climb? It's a very, very different mindset this year. You're not climbing a mountain. You're not punching above your weight class. You're already in a Power 5 league, technically, even though you're technically also still playing in a Group of 5 league. So that is something I'm truly wondering is, if you don't have a mountain to climb, what will motivate this team? I think it's going to be, I think they're out to prove something. One question I have that I'm going to talk about extensively throughout the week leading up to the game at Arkansas is, if Cincinnati goes into Fayetteville and wins, are they worthy if they win out the rest of the way? Are they worthy of discussion for the college football playoff? I think they should be. Given what they did last year, given where they're going next year, and given that they just went into an SEC environment and won, I think they should absolutely be in the conversation. But what mindset do you have? This team's out to prove that last year was not a fluke. This team is still out to win a 3rd straight conference championship. What you have to defend this year is a conference winning streak that is at, they went 7-0 in 2020, 9-0 last year. You're 16-0 over your last 2 seasons in conference play. You have also won, this is where my UC math is really going to bail me out. Let's see, 6 wins. Actually, no. You have 26 straight home wins. My UC math apparently does me well. 26 straight home wins. Are you really going to let that streak end this year? Because I don't think there's any team that can come into Nippert Stadium and win. Maybe Indiana. That's it. And that's not even really a serious consideration. So you have a lot to defend. You're defending a college football playoff berth. You're defending 16 straight conference wins. You're defending 26 straight home wins. And you're defending 2 straight conference championship wins. And you're going to the Big 12 next year. A lot to keep in mind, a lot to prove this season, and a lot of motivation, even though the Cincinnati Bearcats have already climbed the mountain. Up next, the new voice, or rather familiar voice, an offensive coordinator. How about Gino Guidugli fare this season, calling plays for the Cincinnati Bearcats offense? He should fare well. I'll explain next after a word from betonline.net. Betonline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all of the latest sports, and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news of every league. So maybe if you want to find out where the Cincinnati Bearcats projection is over under the season, I'll tell you it's at 9. Maybe you want to find out and decide, do you want to bet on them to win a third straight conference championship? You should. You can find all of that. And also for Major League Baseball, second half is officially underway. NFL, which training camp for the Bengals starts tomorrow. I know my friends James Rapine and Jake Lisco of Locked On Bengals are excited about that. You can also find NBA, NHL, combat sports even, esports, and even golf. I need to hit the links soon. I haven't been in a while. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. I think one thing that was a surprise after the season, and the thing, was finding out Gino Guidugli was calling the plays last year for Cincinnati. Because everybody loved to blame Mike Denbrock if something went wrong. When really it was Gino Cadouli calling plays. And Gino Guidugli has not called plays yet. Had not called plays until last season. He did. And I think he's going to be magnificent this year. I look at Gino Guidugli, and I think he's in a great position. Why? Because everyone loves him. He's a Bearcat at heart. He's been associated with the program for the last 20 years. He understands everything there is to know about this Bearcats football program. Like, Luke Fickell's the head coach. But if there's any ambassador right now on this coaching staff for the university, besides Fickell, because of his hometown roots and because he has been with this program for 20 plus years, it is Gino Guidugli, without question. I don't think we truly grasp his place, connection, and his meaning to the University of Cincinnati. It is remarkable. He is set up to succeed. He called plays last year for an offense that scored 70 touchdowns, that scored 513 points, that averaged almost 40 points a game, scored over 40 points 6 times, got above 50 twice, and did so against some really good defenses. Essentially, he's going into his second season as offensive coordinator. Now, how he fares without Desmond Ridder, that's the big key. That's the big question. Because the last 4 years, he's been mentoring, he's been grooming, he's been developing Desmond Ridder. Now, you got to move on to your next project. Whether that is Ben Bryant, whether that is Evan Prater, which it should be Evan Prater. I'm not sure if Ben Bryant is a project. I think Ben Bryant is someone who you're going to have to get everything out of that you can. And maybe that is the definition of a project. But in my view, why don't you take on developing Evan Prater? And if that means you're spending more time with him than Ben Bryant because you know his potential and you saw him back up Desmond Ridder for 2 years, and because he plays a lot like Desmond Ridder with his dual threat abilities, if that means you spend more time with him, then that's fine by me. If it means Cincinnati's offense is still very good this year and next year in the Big 12 and years down the road, however long Evan Prater stays, that's fine by me because Evan Prater has more potential. That's Gino Guidugli's next project. He made Desmond Ridder into an NFL quarterback. Now he has to embark on taking on the role of making Evan Prater a college football quarterback, which I think he can be. Essentially, he's going into his second season. You know fans love him. Can he develop both of these quarterbacks? And maybe he can develop Ben Bryant. Maybe Gino Guidugli can unlock what's missing from Ben Bryant because it does feel like, and I know he hasn't played a lot of games as a Bearcat. He played one, played admirably well. But it feels like he has this ceiling above him that you don't really think he can be all that great. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're wrong if you think that. Maybe Gino Cadouli can unlock whatever's missing. You know, how does Gino Cadouli react to this program? Essentially his program. He quarterbacked this program for years when it was just becoming of age in the early to mid 2000s. How does he react given he's been here for more than 2 decades? Or he's been a part of this program at various parts for the better part of the last 2 decades. How does he react? You know, how does he find motivation? I think, and that's not just him, but an overall theme for this year's team is how do you find motivation for this season? Because, again, you're going to the Big 12. You're coming off a college football playoff season. And so that leads me to ask the question, what is the motivation for this season? It should be, hey, we got a new offensive coordinator. We got a new quarterback. We're going to the Big 12. We're going to be back in the college football playoff again, maybe this year. And you know what? Now that this team has made the playoff, who's to say they can't make it again? Who is to say seriously they can't make it again as a group of 5 team? If Butler did it, went to the national championship game in college basketball as a group, as a mid-major 2 straight years, who's to say the Cincinnati Bearcats, with the talent that they have and where they've been the last few years, and where they can go offensively because Gino Guidugli is their offensive coordinator, who is to say they can't make the college football playoff again? And don't think Gino Guidugli doesn't think that. He does, because he knows this program more than anybody, except for maybe Luke Fickell, and that's it. And maybe Gino Cadouli knows more about it than Luke Fickell because he's been here longer. And now, his next mission is, we know he's the offensive coordinator. We know everything this offense does is going to fall on his shoulders. We're not going to scapegoat Mike Denbrock anymore because he's at LSU. But we know Gino Guidugli. We know he's aggressive. We know he's dual threat. We know he sees the game from a quarterback's perspective because he was the pass game coordinator. Now he's the offensive coordinator. He is responsible for everybody on this offense. How does he balance the running game with the passing game? That's a big question. It's a very big question. Because this team is a run-first offense. And Gino has said you're not going to see many changes this season. I think that that's fine. But I'm wondering if there will be maybe even just a little bit. Because Mike Denbrock was a tight ends coach. So he was in the trenches, let's run the ball, let's get our tight ends working. Gino Cadouli was a passing game coordinator. Now, how that impacts what this offense is this year from last year remains to be seen. I don't think you're going to see much change either. But I do think you will see maybe a little bit. I think you will see some receivers get involved with Gino Guidugli at quarterback. And believe it or not, this Bearcats program has produced some good receivers over the years. Perhaps the receivers that are on this year's team will be the next in line. Speaking of which, that is what we're talking about on tomorrow's show. Running backs and wide receivers, plus linebackers. 3 strong skill positions that have great potential, but who emerges at running back as the lead back? What's Corey Kiner's role? I mean, we haven't really talked about much about him this offseason outside of when he transferred here and all the reaction. And linebackers, are there any prize recruits, hometown recruits, that are finally going to make their presence known this year? And a wide receiver, how much of a part will they have in this offense? They could have a very extensive role in this offense. We will find out. Don't forget to subscribe to the Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel. Up to 373 subscribers and counting. Follow us too to get an alert every time we drop a new episode. Don't forget too, you can follow me on Twitter at Frankie_90 with 2 N's and an ATI. You can follow me on Instagram, AlexFrank9_, or email me at alex3frank@gmail.com. Thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. Now go make your second listen and get more on the Big 12 by making Locked On Big 12 your second listen. Everyday host Josh Neighbors and the local experts of Locked On take you across the conference in 30 minutes. Locked On Big 12, your second listen. That's Locked On Big 12. For the Locked On Bearcats podcast, my name is Alex Frank. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. Back tomorrow with talking about running backs and wide receivers and linebackers. So much to get to tomorrow. Hope you'll join us and make us your first listen every day. For Locked On Bearcats on Monday, today, I'm Alex Frank. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll be back on Locked On Bearcats tomorrow.